Shunyo
Okay, so this is actually the third meeting in this class. I Good to see you here, John. I really apologize for not getting you the right link the last time when you tried. Um, I appreciate the fact that you persisted and came to this one. So this is a third meeting of this class. We This is a class on traditional Buddhist chanting, um, and the way the class is organized is that we meet twice a month, and we spend 2 months on one chant and then move on to another chant. So right now we are about halfway into our discussion of Jijang Bosal chanting. Um, but at the same time, so in addition to discussing specifically whatever chant it is that is on our agenda, there's lots of general questions and topics and issues in the whole subject of chanting. So, chanting is a broader uh, topic than just Buddhist chanting. So there's chanting, the really big. There's Buddhist chanting, then there's the chanting, the chants, specific chants that we're going to be talking about. So uh, yeah, if someone at this point has a question or something they want to make sure that we talk about, or some um, thought that you have about chanting. This and also at any other time during the discussion, feel free to break in. But does anybody want to raise something, um, or should I just dive into some PowerPoint slides, which I have? Let's see. Here we go. I think this. Oh yeah, this is the right one. So I'm going to share my screen again. Um, and then I'm going to try to, oh yeah, go into slideshow mode from the beginning. So I'm going to the beginning just so we've already covered this to some extent, but I'm going to just to remind myself and everyone else. So our schedule, here's the schedule over here in the green box. Um, and we will have a break at 7:35 and then come back and continue on until 8:15. We began this first session with chanting the Great Dharani at the end of the second session, so we'll do that every time we meet. Um, we'll always begin with the Great Dharani, or possibly the Heart Sutra. I think last time I couldn't find the recording for the Great Dharani. We might have done the Heart Sutra, but then at the end we will end every meeting with the chanting whatever chant it is that we are currently discussing. So we'll at the end of right around a little bit before 8:15, we will chant the Jijang Bosal chant together. And we, like I said, we meet this is the first Tuesday of April, and this is the order of the chants that we'll be doing. We're currently discussing and looking at the Jijang Bosal chant. The next one we do will be the Homage to the Three Jewels. After that is the Kanzeon chant, also known as the 10-phrase Kanon Sutra. Then the Heart Sutra, then the Great Dharani, and then finally, and this will be almost a year from now, we'll be talking about Kwanzaa Bosal chanting, which is actually very similar to and closely related to Jijang Bosal chanting. Okay, so we've covered a lot of this already, and this all these PowerPoint slides will be available for download. If you look into when I upload the, I'm just kind of skipping through these things. When I upload the recording of this class to YouTube, in the description section of that YouTube video will be a link to the uh, PowerPoint presentation. Now, here we go. Now, this is kind of where we are in the discussion. We've the structure of the Jijang Bosal chant is right here. It begins with uh, 4 lines that each begin with the phrase Namu, which means to bow. And I'll go back just to kind of look at that. Let's see, where is that? Here we go. So these are the first 3 lines of the chant. Namu Nambang Hwaju Jijang Bosal. Namu Yumyong Gyoju Jijang Bosal. Namu Daewon Bonjon Jijang Bosal. And so Namu means pay homage to or take refuge in. Zen Master Sung San very much like to say that Namu means to become one with. But the literal meaning is you bow down. The Namu means bow to, like in Namaste. Um, and then after the Namu of each of these 3 lines is some way of calling or referring to basically one of the names or appellations or epithets of Jijang Bosal. So this first one is this. Here's kind of a literal translation: the Southern Direction Transformation Lord, the Dark Realm Teacher Master, and the Great Vows Root Venerated One. So these are just different ways of referring to Jijang Bosal, and we talked about that. We talked about these in a previous class. I just wanted to kind of review this because now we're talking about the overall structure of the chant, and this is the first part of that structure where you are. And, oh, and I should emphasize that this structure is the same for 4 different chants that Zen Master Sung San taught to his students. There's this chant, the Jijang Bosal chant. There's the Kwanseum Bosal chant. There's the Namu Amida Bull chant, and there's the Sogamuni Bull chant. And so the Jijang Bosal chant is directed to the Bodhisattva Jijang Bosal. The Kwanseum Bosal chant is directed to Kwanseum Bosal. The Namu Amida Bull chant is directed to Amitabha Buddha. And the Sogamuni Bull chant is directed to Shakyamuni Buddha. Um, so these are 4 different chants that all have the same structure. And the beginning is some section where we are uh, paying homage to saying Namu to um, either all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas or specifically to the Buddha or Bodhisattva that the chant is concerned with. Um, so this slide goes over a little bit more detail about what those first 3 lines say and things that I just said, and then the 4th line in the Jijang Bosal chant. The 4th line is still part of the same opening section of the chant, and it just strings together all the different names of Jijang Bosal in one line. Namu Nambang Hwaju Yumyong Gyoju Daewon Bonjon Jijang Bosal. Now, all right, that's the first part of the chant up here in this slide. Number 1, the invocation, refuge, homage, Namu, the Namu section. Okay. Then the second part of this chant, and this again is the same for the other chants of this type, which this type of chant is called the Yumbul chant. Yumbul is let me ask this for a show of hands here. Who here is familiar with the phrase Nembutsu or Nyanfo or yeah? Anybody heard that phrase before? Nembutsu, Nyanfo. Yeah. So this is actually an ancient phrase that goes back to the early Buddhism. It means mindfulness of Buddha. And so any kind of practice where the Buddha taught a variety of meditation techniques or just practices um, where there was a certain object or focus for one's practice. And possibly the most famous of these is breath practice, right? So the Buddha taught people to meditate and focus their attention on the breath. He taught a number of other kinds of mindfulness or concentration practices. These terms are all kind of approximate, but one of them was just mindfulness of Buddha, uh, and that the mindfulness of Buddha practice has expanded. It can be expanded to be mindful because there's actually more than one Buddha, and in addition to many Buddhas, there's also many Bodhisattvas. So any practice that is a mindfulness practice where we are choosing to focus our attention on a particular Buddha or a particular Bodhisattva, or possibly on all the Buddhas and all the Bodhisattvas. That's another way of doing it. This is just called a Yumbul or mindfulness of Buddha practice. And one way of doing that kind of practice is to chant the name of a Buddha or a Bodhisattva. And so in addition to just chanting the name of the Buddha or the Bodhisattva, you make it like a little ceremony out of it. You start with the namus, okay, with the bows, with the homage to the refuge, the invocation, and then you go into the part of the chant that is, you could say this is the Yumbul part, properly speaking, where you just recite the name of the Bodhisattva over and over again. So in Jijang Bosal chanting, that just means you recite Jijang Bosal, Jijang Bosal, Jijang Bosal, Jijang Bosal, like that. And you can do that several times. You can do it 108 times. 108 is a nice round number in Buddhism. Things are often done 108 times in Buddhism. Or you can do it for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour. If you go to YouTube, you can find uh, videos of people doing it for, often people do it for like 2 hours, which is a long time to repeat something over and over again like that. But Korean Buddhists tend to take this kind of practice very seriously. So they'll get together in a group and they'll have one person who's leading, and then they'll just chant the name of a Buddha or a Bodhisattva for 2 hours. And sometimes they'll record it and post the recording on YouTube, thankfully, which is nice. So you can see them doing it. And I'll post some examples of that again in the description of when I post the recording of this class. Then, and actually we've talked about this already. Okay, so this is all kind of me just making sure that we're all together and kind of reviewing. This is good stuff to review, in my opinion. Um, it's good to know that this chant isn't just a random string of syllables. Um, there is an underlying structure to the different parts of it, and then after reciting the name of the Buddha or Bodhisattva, in this case Jijang Bosal, then comes the 5 mantras, and this is what I want to focus on tonight and then in our next meeting as well. Uh, and tonight I want to talk about the first of the 5 mantras. But then there's also a little section at the end, the ending, the closing section, which is actually an excerpt from the Avatamsaka Sutra. It comes from the very, very, very end of the Avatamsaka Sutra, which is a huge, when I say huge, I mean huge. I mean, it's gigantic. It's like, yeah, anyway. Uh, and this is from the end of it. This is a praise of Shakyamuni Buddha from the very end of the Avatamsaka Sutra. And so just again, this is the same pattern that is found in all 4 of these chants that Zen Master Sung San taught to his students. Um, and let's see. Oh yeah. So yeah. So one of the things I want to talk about tonight, and I like for us to talk about, is the very first mantra of these 5 mantras. The very first one, and this is one of the places where the Jijang Bosal chant differs from the other chants. So, as I've noted here, the mantra in the Jijang Bosal chant is called it's actually called Jijang Bosal's Dharani. Dharani in mantra. Some people are sticklers for precise definitions when it comes to Dharani and mantra, but in fact, in practice, Dharani and mantra mean the same thing. Um, I'll just say that. Some people won't like that, but it, and in this case, they do mean the same thing. So this is a literal translation of the title of this mantra: destroy fixed karma Dharani. So we'll talk a little bit about what fixed karma is. We talked about that somewhat in the last meeting. And this is it. Om Baramani Dani Sabaha. Om Baramani Dani Sabaha. Om Baramani Dani Sabaha. This is a very, very popular mantra because it's supposed to help you to get rid of difficult karma. Now, in in the other chants, in the Kwanzaa Bosal chanting, Sogamoni Bull chanting, Namamita Bull chanting, there's a different mantra that's used, which is the destroy, which is also called the destroy karmic obstacles mantra. It's also this word destroy or eliminate is the first word. Karma, this is the character for karma here. This character means like an obstacle. This character means something that is very fixed and solid. And then these are the 2 characters for mantra, and these are the 3 characters for Dharani, and the actual Dharani itself. So when you do a typical way of incorporating a mantra into a chant, this is a pattern that one often finds in Buddhist chanting. First, you recite the title of the mantra one time, and then you repeat the mantra itself 3 or more times. And so this is the mantra itself here for the other chants. Om Araruge Sabaha, Om Araruge Sabaha. Does anybody have any questions about that or comments?
Just to reiterate, Kurt, you're saying that the other three have the exact same one, the exact same words in there.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And so, and actually, in the dissemination of these chants around the world, I mean, literally around the world, because Zen Master Sung San was fairly active in his teaching all over the planet, and so some people, and this is actually typical of the dissemination of mantra and chanting practice in the history of Buddhism. It Some people use this mantra even for Jijang Bosal chanting. Now, it's not for me to say that anybody's doing it wrong, except, in fact, I think they are doing it wrong. They do it that way. But so it's a little confusing if you say there's 4 chants, they're all the same, except for this. It's much easier for people to say there's 4 chants and they're almost all the same. Uh, and all 5 mantras are the same, and that's how some people chose to hear it when Zen Master Sung San was explaining it to people. It was a little too complicated, I guess. I don't know. And so you will find, if you I am really, really interested in chanting. I spent a lot of my time researching chants, both in our tradition and in other traditions, including Hinduism, Jainism, Theravada Buddhist chanting. Chanting is really interesting, I think. But there are lots of people um, uh, who say that uh, you do this mantra with the Jijang Bosal chant, but it's not quite right, in my opinion. Well, it's not just my opinion.
Any thoughts, Kurt, on how these four perhaps developed and why this one is unique
Mm,
within this section?
yeah. Hmm.
Is it saying anything about the status or level of Jijang Bosal?
Yeah. So the what so one of the reasons why there is a difference in specifically in this mantra is because people really like this Dharani. Okay. And so they
Okay.
so basically, and that's one of the things I'm going to talk about later on. You can find it, you can find, if you search around on the internet, you can find chanting books in Vietnamese that have this Dharani in it. You can find videos of people chanting in Chinese using this Dharani. So there's 2 things. One is that Jijang Bosal, also known as Jizo or Chittigarba or Dizang, is extremely popular for a variety of reasons. The 2 main reasons why he's so popular is, one is that he is a bodhisattva that is supposed to help people who have very difficult karma. Okay, that's kind of his specialty. Um, and along with that, closely related to that, is that Jijang Bosal is the bodhisattva that people pray to when someone has died. And also in theory, if you believe in life after death, then after you have died, you would pray to Jijang Bosal, please come help me, in my transition from one lifetime to the next, because that's also a central part of his of Jijang Bosal's job. And so uh, this mantra is very, very popular. The mantra for the Om Araruge Sabaha is very popular in Korea. It's not that well known outside of Korea, whereas this mantra is extremely well known throughout East Asia. And so this one was just too good. I think they had, and it is specifically associated with Jijang Bosal. So in this chant, and I mean, uh, for people who are not as familiar with the history and the significance of Jijang Bosal and this mantra, I think their unfamiliarity with that history and the significance of this Dharani is the reason why they said, why do we have to have a separate Dharani for Jijang Bosal? Let's just use this one like all the other
Mm,
ones, and
hmm,
and that's okay. I mean, all of these chants change throughout the. I mean, these chants all eventually go back to India. Um, all of these chants and mantras and dharanis, um, they uh, they're not supposed to stay fixed. You know, the only way something can stay unchanged is if it's dead. So if something is preserved, you know, um, then usually that means you stick it in, some preservative. Um, Although now preserves, if you think about jams and jellies and preserves, that's a different matter. But I'm talking about something that is preserved in a jar, but not to be eaten, but rather just be looked at. Um, these chants are not preserved. They are kept alive, generation after generation by people chanting them. And as people chant them, it's kind of like a very 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 long and drawn out game of telephone. Where um, I tell you one thing and then you tell someone else and it changes. It does, and people get, so there's nothing wrong with the fact that some people do it with this mantra and some people do it with that mantra. But I really do think that people who don't chant this Dharani are missing um, something good, in my opinion. Anyway, so, uh, okay. I'm going to minimize people's pictures again. We've got, if I can figure out how to do that, let's see. Oh, yeah, here we go. Good. Now, all right. When doing Kwanzaa Bosal chanting or Namamita chanting or Sogamani Bull chanting, the first mantra is always a mantra. So these, even though they're two different mantras, they both have the same basic idea. Um, the mantra to eliminate karmic obstructions, the Dharani to eliminate fixed karma. Yeah, it's basically the same idea. Uh, And this is a quote. I actually had it on the other slide. But I kind of skipped over it. This is a quote from a very famous Korean Zen teacher, Sosan Tesa, um, who said, "It may be relatively easy to control karma made in the present life, so you just correct it through your own effort. However, the karma accumulated over many previous lives is very difficult to erase. For this work, you must rely on the mystic power of repeating a mantra." Now, um, so whether or not you believe in the that you have karma from past lives, what Sosantesa is saying here is that if for karma that you can just go ahead and fix yourself, karma that is, what is karma? Karma means some pattern of behavior and thinking that you have. And we all know about patterns of behavior and thinking that we have, that we would like to change. And so if you can change it, under your own power, just change it. But if you find that it's a little harder than that, then maybe you should try some mantra work. That's what Sosantesa is saying. Um, and also, and this, I also talked about this last time. This is, I think, extremely important to emphasize. Um, these mantras are not esoteric or tantric. There's these 5 mantras that Zen Master Sung San um, taught. Now, if you are consider yourself to be an esoteric Buddhist or a tantric Buddhist or a Vajrayana Buddhist, you may think of these mantras as part of your tradition in that sense. But um, and I'm going to talk about this more after the break. These mantras are available free to anyone. You can find them on the internet. You can buy extremely inexpensive pamphlets in Korea. Um, I mean, for less than $5 that have all these mantras in them and explanations of what they are and how to do them. So there's nothing, there's no empowerment or initiation or permission that is necessary to do these mantras. And like that. Let's see now. How are we doing on time?
Kurt, question,
Yeah,
question,
sure. Go
please.
ahead, Joe. Hmm.
Is it that these people that can buy these books or pamphlets, what have you, are they buying them because they are Buddhist or fallen away Buddhist, and perhaps they are desperate with some
Hmm.
situations, and that's
Hmm.
it's a little bit of a superstition that they're buying into.
Um, so this is, I would say that that's, from my understanding, that's not the case.
Good,
These are people
good.
who are just ordinary Buddhists. So in addition to, there's a variety of booklets and pamphlets that are available in Korea that are very inexpensive. Um, but in addition to that, it's very common for groups of Buddhists, groups of lay Buddhists, to just get
Mm,
together and
mm,
print at their own expense
mm.
copies of sutras, copies of chants, and just make stacks of them and go and put up a table in front of a Buddhist temple and just hand them out for free. Um, that's a very
Are,
common activity for lay Buddhist groups. Uh,
is that for merit?
well, I mean, it's to save all beings, is what it is, Joe. Of course.
Right. Well, I'm thinking of there's the Japanese
Hmm. Hmm.
shakya, I believe, where you're
Oh yeah,
copying.
no, yeah, right. So sutra copying. When you say is that for merit, so very important practice, and this is actually part of the Jijang Bosal chant, is sharing of merit or dedicating merit. So whatever
Mm,
merit you're dedicating, if you think I'm going to hand out Buddhist chants for free to people, or I'm going to write the Heart Sutra, and there will be some merit accrued from that. In Mahayana Buddhism, we always dedicate that merit, for the benefit of all beings. Um, we want some of that merit for ourselves too. We might dedicate some of it to our parents, or if we have a sick friend or whatever. I mean, of course, the Buddha. We are one of those sentient beings, right?
right. Yes.
uh,
Yes, we
and
are.
and and we do benefit from those practices. Um, but in Mahayana Buddhism, we're always focused on dedicating the merit of whatever practice we do, for the benefit of all beings. Um, and so it is 7:36 now. So um, we're going to take a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back and continue on. We'll talk more about this mantra. Um, okay.
Great. Thanks.
Let me Okay. So, at this point, does anybody have any questions or anything you want to bring up? Uh, so one thing that I'm gonna kind of talk about a little bit in the next section, um, and that has already been covered somewhat, but I don't think there's any way to avoid coming back to it, um, basically over and over again. It's the whole question of so sometimes people say, well, why chant? Why do we have to chant? Can't we just do sitting meditation? But then, uh, uh, even among people who are willing to or interested in doing chanting, there's also the question of why do we have to chant in these? Why can't we chant in English for those of us who speak English? Um, and uh, it's an interesting question. What do people think about that? I'm trying to prod some. What do people think about that? Anyone? Now, Joe is talkative, and so
Yes.
I'm gonna I'm gonna ask if either John or Lauren have anything to say about this whole issue of and you know it's it is a important um, question to ask. Well, so first of all, it's always important to ask questions. More important to ask questions than to latch on to answers. Um, and so it's an interesting question, in my opinion, to look at. Why not just chant in English? Any thoughts? I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot. It's a fairly small group, so I don't want. Oh, I see Lauren has unmuted herself.
Yes. If you guys know Thomas, I don't know how you pronounce his last name, but he is at the mountain right now. Tack, I think.
Yeah.
And he had maintained that he really appreciates chanting in Korean specifically because it provides a method of detaching from the thinking mind. So that might be a useful tool. Also, of course, just the nod to the lineage tradition.
Right. So one interesting thing about that is that these chants are not in Korean. They are actually in Chinese, and actually, a lot of them aren't even in Chinese. They're kind of in Sanskrit, and so of course we say the Korean. So we're chanting in the Korean style, but if you were to recite one of these chants to someone who is a native speaker of Korean but not a Buddhist and doesn't know anything about this chanting, they would say that it doesn't make any sense, that's not Korean. Um, Although for part, so and actually that's true for part of the chant, but not for some. So, like for example, when we chant the Heart Sutra, that's pretty much in Chinese, but with a Korean accent, with the Korean pronunciation of the Chinese characters. When we say in the Jijang Bosal chant, we say Nambang Huaju. I can't remember it, but anyway, again, it's the Korean pronunciation of the Chinese characters, and it actually gets a little complicated, but it's not that complicated, especially anybody who was born and raised Catholic up up until not too long ago. I mean, like so in the when was it? The '60s, Vatican II. When was that? When the Catholic Church decided to translate all of the liturgy into whatever into everybody's native language. Um, but up until that point, for centuries and a long time, uh, uh, a lot of Christians had always done all of their religious services in Latin. Um, and but and I don't want to say what's a good idea and what's not a good idea, but um, uh, Joseph Campbell, who is someone that I really like. I don't agree with everything that Joseph Campbell's ever said about anything. He said Joseph Campbell, he was a talker. he had a lot of ideas. He wrote a lot. He talked a lot. He anyway. But one of the things that he said was that in Vatican II they should have let women be priests and let priests get married, but kept the Latin liturgy. He said they did exactly. They wanted to modernize. You want to modernize, get rid of these stupid rules about how women can't be priests. Um, but don't throw out Latin because it's beautiful. And so that yeah, I don't. Uh, and
Sure.
I do think Latin is beautiful. And not only is Latin beautiful, but it also meant that everybody around the world was basically saying the same thing. So, um, and that raises another point. What we're chanting is actually poetry, and it's actually very, very difficult to translate poetry in a way that both preserves not just the meaning in terms of the dictionary definition of the meaning of the words, but what the poetry evokes. Because poetry isn't the meaning of poetry doesn't come about uh, in a linear analytical way. The meaning of poetry is supposed to have some meaning that one feels, and that I guess at one point in my life when I was very young, I wanted to be a poet. Don't all teenagers want to be poets? Um, I think all teenagers are poets there, but anyway,
Good.
but so this is poetry, and once you try to translate poetry, especially if the poetry is poetry that either is the words of the Buddha or is a way of presenting Buddhist teachings in a very poetic way where the poetry has been written by people who are very highly realized, enlightened Buddhist teachers, um, then the only way that you can translate it well is if you are a great poet and you are highly realized. and you know, I I would defer and just leave it as it is. Anyway, but um, and it also it does help to uh, on the one hand, it does help to do what Thomas, was that his name? Thomas, I think you said Thomas. I can't remember. I haven't met him, but
Yep.
Thomas. Yep. Okay. Um, on the one hand, it does help to kind of create this distance, that you're not thinking about the meaning of these things. On the other hand, it is good to know what it is that you're chanting. Um, in fact, you should know what it is that you're chanting, or at least try to not in a completely intellectual way, but just to make sure you're not chanting, you know, death to our enemies, or anything like that. There's a funny story about a person who was at a Tibetan Buddhist retreat, and this person, she actually kept asking for a translation of the chants. They were doing all these chants in Tibetan, and they kept saying, "Oh, you just don't you just do the practice. You just pay attention to the sound and the rhythm. It doesn't matter what it means." But she persisted, and finally somebody dug up a translated translation, handed it to her, and she said, "This part here where it says we're drinking the blood of our enemies out of their broken skulls, which we're using as cups. Why is that there?" And they said, "Oh, it's just a metaphor. It's a metaphor. It's about the enemies of the Dharma, you know, and the enemies of the Dharma are, of course, greed, hatred, and ignorance. So those are the enemies that we have defeated, and we are, you know, but so it is good to know if even if it's just a metaphor, it's good to know what it is that you're chanting. Okay, speaking of which, I can see this now, but you can't. Let's see. Here we go. All right. Participants can now see my screen, and all right. So this is this is Jijang Bosal's um, uh, Dharani for uh,
Mm.
destroying or eliminating fixed karma. And oh, so we were talking before about how uh, in the transmission of these chants and mantras, um, sometimes people get things wrong or whatever. And this is an interesting little example actually of that. Generally speaking, um, when we chant the title of this Dharani, in fact, I have it somewhere. Let me bring that. Let me bring that up. I have the chanting book here. Oh yeah, let's see now. Can everybody see my screen now? Right. This is a Thousand Hands and Eye Sutra. There's Jijang Bosal chanting. Okay, good. Oh, Jijang Bosal chanting 30. All right. Here we go. All right. Maybe make this a little bigger. Yeah. Okay. All right. So here is the Jijang Bosal chant. This is a PDF that you can download from the website of the Kansas Zen Center. This is you these kinds of chanting books. So this is when I was talking about the little pamphlets or booklets that people in Korea can purchase for like $2.50 online, um, or that you can just download. Actually, I mean, so this is an example of just kind of making the chants freely available to people, and yeah. So in this chanting book, you have a word for word kind of literal translation alongside of the um, uh, transliterated the when we're chanting these chants, we're looking at these letters that we recognize that are sounding out um, the words of the chant. Oh yeah, so here it is. This is the part that I was looking at. I want to make this bigger. Oh yeah, okay, good. Oh, excellent. All right, so you can see this now. I'm looking at Myor Opchang Darani, right? Everybody see that? Okay. All right. So that's actually not right. That's the way everybody chants it. But it's actually Myor Changop Darani. And
Huh?
uh, it's, but it doesn't. So uh, since everybody already chants it this way, and this word for word, uh, and this was put together by Stanley Labardo, who knows a lot more Chinese than I ever will. He knows that it's actually Chang Op instead of Op Chang. The reason why people chant it this way is because the mantra, the other mantra, is the Myor Op Chang Jinon, and so uh, if you
Mm,
look at the yeah,
gotcha.
so and it's not worth trying to correct that, in my opinion. It's uh, And I only bring it up because I think it is good to know what you're chanting. And once you drill down and look to see character by character what it is that we're chanting, you can't get around the fact that this character is Jung and this character is Up. That's just the way they're pronounced. And yet, uh, when people chant it, we chant it your Opjang instead of your Jung Op. Um,
Mm,
but so so on the one hand, it causes some amount of confusion to point this out, to point out this little mistake that we make when we're chanting this. On the other hand, if anybody comes along and tries to work this out, which I have done kind of on my own, it causes even more confusion when you look at it and you say, wait a minute. And well, anyway, so but this is good to know. One of the interesting things about this is that uh, this character here, so this is the character for karma, which is pronounced op. This kind of funky looking, very symmetric, very nice. As Chinese characters go, this is a very pretty one. And this character modifying it, Zheng, oh, look, see, I got the, whoops, wait a minute. So if you know Hangul, I got these, I got the Hangul characters mixed up. If you were to look at this, I got them backwards. I got to fix this on the slide. This character here is the character for, so here it's being translated as fixed. And this is one of the things I want to talk about now. What is fixed karma? But this character is the same character as is also sometimes translated as samadhi. This is the character for samadhi. So what is samadhi? So samadhi, when you practice meditation, you are cultivating samadhi. Samadhi means stillness. Samadhi means, but it also means not moving. It means solid. It means, so one of the metaphors for samadhi is to have samadhi like a mountain. And in fact, that's one of the traditional ways of describing how to do Zen meditation, is to sit like a mountain. The mountain isn't going anywhere. The clouds come, the rains come, the seasons come and go. The mountain is just there. And and we all have karma like that too. We try, and we try, and we try, and the karma is still there. And so when you have karma that is like a mountain, this is the mantra or dharani for working on that kind of karma. And this is breaking it down. Myor, the first part. So when we chant, we say Myor Obchang Jinon, or I'm sorry, Myor Obchang Dharani. So in the chant, we say, we have all the namus, right? Namu, Nambang, Hwaju, Jijang Bosal, etc., etc., etc. Then we chant Jijang Bosal for 108 times or 54 times or a couple of dozen or until the a lot of times it's like a lot of times it's until the person who's leading the chant gets tired of repeating it. Or for 2 hours if you're want to be really hardcore. But then then we chant, then we go into the 5 mantras. And so then we say Myor Obchang Dharani. Om Baramani Dani Sabaha, Om Baramani Dani Sabaha, Om Baramani Dani Sabaha. And so Myor is to destroy or to eliminate, get rid of. This is a character that comes up in the Heart Sutra as well. It gets around. Jung means stable or fixed or samadhi. Up means karma. And just like in Sanskrit, this word up in Korean also means work, which in Sanskrit, karma means action. Doesn't necessarily mean work, but it means activity, action. And then this is just a sounding out of the Sanskrit word dharani. Anyway, so Om Baramani Dani Sabaha. And it's possible to reconstruct what the original Sanskrit is for this. But as far as I can tell, nobody knows what this Sanskrit. So sometimes, so Om, I wouldn't say that you can. It isn't that Om is meaningless, right? Om is not meaningless, but at the same time, if you were to say what does Om mean, if you looked up the definition of Om in a dictionary, it really wouldn't be very, you have to kind of do Om you do Om, then you know what Om means. Svaha or Sabaha is a very common way of ending a mantra. This is a very ancient Sanskrit uh, uh, expression. It doesn't, again, it doesn't, it's not that it means something, but it means this is the end of the mantra. and tradition, and one of the traditions that's associated with the expression svaha in Hinduism, and well, actually not just in Hinduism, actually this is in Buddhism as well. You take the mantra and you write it um, on sandalwood, or you write it on a scented wood that has like agar wood, which is what's another name for agar wood? Um, well, so agar wood is a very expensive incense. So if you write the mantra on some scented wood, and you chant the mantra, 108 times, or you chant it for 2 hours or whatever, and then at the very end you say svaha and you throw the wood into the fire. And so svaha is often associated with um, basically offering up the mantra, um, viewing the mantra as an offering practice or something like that. There's probably as many or more ways of interpreting, or trying to figure out what svaha means, as there are ways of interpreting or figuring out what om means. But when it comes to pramardani, nobody really seems to know what this means. And if anybody if anybody here knows what pramardani means, this is how it's written in Devanagari. Or if anybody watching this video, once it's been recorded and uploaded to YouTube, knows what it means, please tell me. I would I would love to know. But often these syllables or seed syllables in mantras and dharanis do have some kind of meaning, but often the meaning is like with om or with svaha. It isn't that it one can talk about what it means, but it just doesn't mean cat or dog or um, ice cream or something like that. Now I've talked about this, and I may have mentioned this in a previous meeting of this class, but this is one of these books that I've been talking about. This is from a website. If you know Korean, you can actually. I've got the link right here. In the when I upload this PowerPoint presentation, if you download it, this is a clickable link. You can go there and you can spend 2,700 won, which is about $2.05, and you can buy this. So this is the title of this little booklet is Devotional Practices to Accomplish Bodhisattva Vow. And then the subtitle is that you can do even by yourself. And this is spelled out in Korean. So this part is in Korean. This isn't in Sanskrit. This isn't in Chinese. This is uh, available to people, um, and written out and explained in Korean. And the point of this, by yourself possible can be done, or that you can do even by yourself, is to encourage the practice of chanting, um, for people to do. So Joe was talking about who would buy this kind of a little pamphlet. Anybody who considers himself to be a practicing Buddhist, um, can can buy these, and then and people are encouraged to then practice these chants. So you can go to a temple or go to a group, meet together with others who do these chants, which is a very good practice. But at the same time, you can also do these chants, and I do, on my own. Um, oh yeah. So and that so that raises the question of uh, let's go on from this. I'm going to get back to the thought that I just had, but let's see what else we have here. This is, oh, yeah, so this is the second mantra, which we'll talk about, so in, let me move on a little bit. This is the second mantra, which is very good. So the second mantra is extremely popular. The mantra for the accomplishment of great aspirations. Om Amoka Sabadara Sadaya Shibehom. Om Amoka Sabadara Sadaya Shibehom. Let's see. Okay, so here's all 5 mantras. Okay. Yeah, this time I have I have it backwards again here. I'm gonna have to fix this slide. Okay, so it's Myor Jangop Darani, the one Song Chui Jinon, which is the mantra for accomplishing great aspirations. So there is a one way of kind of understanding the way these mantras are put together, is that the first mantra is focused on difficult karma that we have, overcoming difficulty. The second mantra is on accomplishing our aspirations, and as bodhisattvas, our aspiration is to save all beings, or at least to cause as little harm as possible, or cultivate some Buddha nature, maybe. The third mantra, which actually I'm going to talk quite a bit about in our next meeting, is the Bulso Soje Gilsang Darani. This is the mantra for avoiding calamities and attracting good fortune. The fourth mantra is the mantra for correcting mistakes. And so this is traditionally the second to last mantra that one does. Now, and so in the process of mantras and dharanis and chanting being transmitted from one part of Asia to the other over huge uh, uh, over thousands and thousands of miles, literally, and from one language to another, from people who speak one language to another language to another language. And now these mantras and dharanis and chants are being transmitted all over the world. Oh, people make mistakes. I've talked about that a little bit already. People make mistakes, and no matter, you can study if you want to. Oops, sorry. If you want to, you can take online classes or go to college or whatever, study Sanskrit, study Chinese, uh, you know, and develop perfect pronunciation of Sanskrit and Chinese or whatever. You'll probably still make mistakes. Um, but most of us don't even go that far. Most of us just do, try to sound it out as best as we can. And Zen Master Sung San did not insist that people have, some sort of absolutely correct pronunciation of things. He was he just wanted to encourage people to chant and to do their best. And of course, some people, and whether your pronunciation is correct, whether your voice is very beautiful, whether you're in tune or out of tune, um, you should always try. It's like with sitting, you should try to sit up straight. You should try to be still. You should try to not make noise. You should try to keep your eyes open. You should try to keep your hands in the Mahamudra, or whatever other form that you follow, that you've been taught, that works for you. You try to do all those things, but in practice it's always imperfect, but we practice anyway. And so in chanting, as a recognition of that, there's a very nice little mantra that's the second to last mantra, which basically says, okay, I've done my best, but I probably made some mistakes, and this mantra fixes them all. And actually, there's yeah, okay, we're gonna have to stop soon. But this is another mantra that actually comes from Jijang Bosal. Okay, and then the final mantra is the dedication of merit, and at the very end. So this is just again the way that the chant is organized. I'm sorry, I've gone on a little bit longer than I meant to. We should stop now to do the Jijang Bosal chant. Is that okay? Does everybody have time to stick around? It'll go a little bit past 8:15. Is that okay, John and Lauren? I see Joe is shaking his head. Because it's better to do the Jijang Bosal chant than to talk about it. Okay, so now we will, let me see, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for just a second. While I try to find the right version of the chant for us to do together. And it should be here.
What? You don't have.
Okay, so everybody can see my screen now, right?
Bosal, Jijang 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 Bosal. Yorok Chanting Om Bharamani Dani Sabaha Om Bharamani Dani Sabaha Om Bharamani Dani Sabaha Om Shum Turjano Om Amoka Salvadara Sadaya Shive Om Om Amoka Salvadara Sadaya Shive Om Om Amoka Salvadara Sadaya Shive Om Sotegyo Sandarani Nam Samanda Motanam Abaraji Harasa Sananam Danyata Om Kaka Kai Kai Hum Hum Avara Avara Bara 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 Chitta Chitta Chiri Chiri Pada Pada Sanjiga Shiriye Sabaha Namu Samanda Motanam Abaraji Hadasa Sadanam Danyata Om Kaka Kai Kai Hum Hum Abara Abara Bara 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 Chitta Chitta Chiri Chiri Pada Pada Sanjiga Shiriye Sabaha Namu Samanda Motanam Abaraji Hadasa Sadanam Danyata Om Kaka Kai Kai Hum Hum Abara Abara Bara 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 Chitta Chitta Chiri Chiri Pada Pada Sanjiga Shiriye Sabaha Om Jano Om Horo Horo Saya Roke Sabaha Om Horo Horo Saya Roke Sabaha Om Horo Horo Saya Roke Sabaha Om Yang Jano Om Samara Samara Mimara Charma Jagora Barahom Om Samara Samara Mimara Charma Jagora Barahom Om Samara Samara Mimara Charma Jagora Barahom Chachil Chunyon Gasuji Dehe Jungsuka Hunjin Ogong Gayang Bungaye Monong Jinsol
Okay, so that's it. Thanks for staying here to the end to do the chanting together. And if anybody has any, I hope everybody is doing well. And I hope everybody's enjoying spring weather. You have spring weather there, right, John? Yeah. I hope you do too, Lauren. I know, and you do too, right, Joe? It's spring where you are.
Really, just finally a couple of days.
Yep. Okay. All right. So hopefully we all get to enjoy it before it gets too hot. Bye, everybody. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Been great to have you all here, and
Thank you,
I
Kurt.
will get this posted for if anybody wants to relive this or wants to see any of the links that I promised to provide some of the other information. It'll be up on YouTube sometime tomorrow. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
Bye.